podcast that seeks to explore the unexplored topics in gaming, how they work, and why we love them. We are live today.
Woohoo! I mean, not really, though.
I mean, we're
like together.
We're super live.
Yeah, we are super live. Yeah, that's probably the
yeah, it's super because you can't tell from the recording, but we're right next to each other.
Oh heck yeah! And it really will. It'll come across. If anyone remembers that riot of a cast we did. When was that? Was it December?
Yeah, it was in December. It was for Christmas.
Who can forget that freak show?
If we weren't live, then how could we do this? Talk at the same time. See?
Have no follow-up. Like, exist in the same spot, but they can't see. Anyway, no, it's... do you ever notice, by the way, that our intro is, like, grammatically incorrect? I always feel bad about that every time I say it.
I don't. I didn't know that.
It's unexplored topics in gaming, how they work. It should be unexplored topics in games. We always say gaming, and it's always wrong because how they work, why they work, and why we love them.
Okay, now
because we don't love gaming. Or, I mean, we do. Crap. All right.
Wow.
Language is hard.
Alienated our whole player,
exactly.
Whole listener base.
For anyone who enjoyed that intro, you're wrong and should feel bad. But
well, today we're going to be talking about comparing and contrasting two, on the surface, very similar games. And Greg is next to me, and he's...
these glasses are hard, okay?
He's drinking water, and it's tough.
Well...
Anyway, we're going to be comparing and contrasting Subnautica and No Man's Sky. Now, No Man's Sky has already gotten some... I won't say attention. It's gotten some attention from us.
Yeah, we've talked about it
on this podcast already because it's
one of our famous games we haven't played that we talk about a lot.
Yes,
about like we understand.
Subnautica is a game that we have played.
Heck yes, we have purchased that. It is technically Xander's, actually, but
we're the cheapest gaming analysts in the world.
Hey, we paid for it.
Yeah, that's true.
We
pitched in. Yeah, we split a $20 game three ways.
Exactly, 3 ways, and it's fair actually because he gets it. He gets it his own way. No, we got a full 5-hour session with the game. Mark is obviously in town here in Michigan, just for a little bit, and I'm here, and Xander's obviously here too. Although he's married and we're not roommates anymore. For those of you keeping track of our actual lives, But anyway, so Mark was around and the three of us got together and wanted to play a game, and we were just looking through Steam, I guess, or maybe it was on Xander's wish list or something.
Yeah, I think so.
And it seemed like good fodder, and so we picked it up and played for like five straight hours, right? Rotated between the three of us, which actually worked because I don't think I'd be able to play that game by myself for 5 hours,
just straight,
just like that. But no, So yeah, we'll be talking in context of No Man's Sky. Which Mark has a little bit more expertise than me in that he has watched any gameplay.
Yeah, no, I did. I watched I probably spent a couple of hours watching playthrough, like a let's play.
Right, like the opening too, which was what we experienced of Subnautica.
Right, and so it was it was a pretty even comparison because I feel like. I probably could have watched a little bit more No Man's Sky, but it's way more fun to play. It's actually way more fun to watch Subnautica than it is to watch No Man's Sky. I'm sure it's more fun to play No Man's Sky than it is to watch, but it's still pretty boring.
Yeah, it was. I didn't even run into when you guys were playing, and I was watching, which was 2/3 of the time. I was never at any point not engaged with what we were doing, and partially maybe because I had the ability to say, hey, do this, but in large part, I mean, each person kind of did whatever they were doing, and the other two, it's not like they were backseat gaming a whole ton. So
no.
So yeah, I agreed. Subnautica was quite joyous. So all right. So I want to start with I'm both getting your opinion. So one of the very often criticized portions of No Man's Sky was that it kind of obviously overpromised and underdelivered. Mm-hmm. Subnautica, on the other hand, as far as I know, one, did not have nearly as much hype around it. So just by default, it's hard to compare. But two. Really kind of ran under the radar in terms of even the trailer. What it promised was not. It did not promise. It promised an underwater survival game that was set pretty much solely underwater. Appeared to have some building mechanics and some exploration. Mm-hmm. That is the feeling I got as opposed to No Man's Sky. That literally. The more I talk about No Man's Sky, the more I'm like, why did anyone It promised billions of unique planets and never ending exuberance and discovery. Like
ceaseless joy.
I know, kind of like boundless discovery, no matter what. Like, wow, we reached that at 2017 or 16, did we? Like,
yeah,
fascinating. We solved the human experience. But anyway, the point is, one thing, like I said, that was often derided about No Man's Sky was the fact that it was basically just a rehash of the same stuff over and over again. There was actually very little discovery, and the procedural generation felt like it didn't feel too alien. It felt like crappy versions of like Earth over and over.
Earth, but the trees are red.
I know, exactly. Or like a dinosaur, but dumber. Just think of that. Have you seen the No Man's Sky, the video of? Have you seen the?
No, I don't think I have. I think
I'll show it to you. It's just a video of the E3 footage with the Jurassic Park theme under it, and then the E3 footage is just staggering and beautiful, and it's like, you know. And then it cuts to the actual gameplay, and it cuts to the Jurassic Park version on the harmonica. That like is the and it's this dinosaur is like glitching. It's like it's a really stupid. It's fantastic.
Wow.
It's like 10 seconds. Very much worth the watch. But okay, I'm gonna finally make my point, which is, the world in Subnautica felt appropriately alien to me.
Yeah.
Enough like Earth that it was, you know, recognizable. But there were definitely weird stuff. It wasn't just like, oh, there's like this version of this fish, or like there's like an alien shark, or like an alien jellyfish, or like alien whales. They were at least had different function to them. The aesthetic was pretty darn cool across the board. We had the weird mushrooms. We had the giant kelp forest with the silicone. We had the weird like sulfur fish in the caves that came at you and exploded. That was scary. We saw the whale squids in the background.
Yeah, those were weird.
Don't really know. There were the weird manatee things. They were actually kind of creepy looking. They kind of like the gas mask.
Yeah, but you took a liking to them.
I love the gastropods. Those are great.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't played Subnautica, pretty much
it
opens up with you being in a like little floating capsule in the middle of the ocean.
Escape pod, basically.
Yeah, an escape pod from I assume you're from the Aurora, right? You're from You're from a crashed ship.
Big old crashed ship.
You can see the crashed ship in the distance, and you're just kind of there in your pod, and a bunch of stuff's malfunctioning, and you've got to figure out how to survive.
Yeah.
And so you've given 3 gauges in the bottom left corner.
Right. I was going to talk about that.
Oxygen, food, water, and health, which is sort of like bodily integrity, from what I can surmise.
Yeah, it's less something that goes. Like, you just straight up drown if you run out of oxygen.
Right.
If you run out of water, we did die once.
Yeah, the health went down.
We died of thirst.
Yeah, if you die of thirst.
I'd assume something similar. We never starved, but I'd assume it would be a similar thing where if your food gauge gets to 0, your health being going down. Pretty standard.
Pretty like quickly though. It's not.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous.
The food gauge goes.
Plus they I don't know if they just like programmed in like this amount of damage and then they forgot to change the audio for that amount of damage because you're just swimming around and it takes like a fifth of your health or so when you're at 0 water, and we never made this noise even when we got attacked by other things.
It's true.
But it was a bizarrely painful, very intimate noise. Yeah, I heard like muffled, like kind of thing. That was just funny to think of a guy who was really thirsty swimming in a straight line and just screaming in intervals until he dies.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that's a little bit immersion defying.
It's the only time we made that noise at all.
It's true. Anyway, so gameplay-wise, it's going to involve a lot of collecting of resources, very similar to No Man's Sky. But the thing that, like, a major change to... Okay, so when we talked about No Man's Sky previously, we talked about the problem with not having a home base.
Right.
You're completely untethered. In fact, within the first half hour of the game, you probably have enough resources to take off in your spaceship from a planet and go seemingly anywhere.
Woohoo!
Right? But so you're like immediately untethered from anything.
Right.
You have no place to really call home. Every planet pretty much has the same resources. And at that point, the world starts to shrink real fast. The universe starts to shrink real fast because all the planets seem pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Subnautica was much more tight-fisted in how it dealt out its resources and your ability to explore. You could explore, but you immediately encountered all sorts of obstacles. Yeah. Whether that was, creatures that would attack you, or Greg, you want to mention a couple of the other obstacles that you'd run into?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was reflecting on this too. There was very little artificial gating of your ability to explore. It was very like organic gating, which is you don't have too many, like literally don't even have an oxygen tank at the beginning of it, so you have 30 seconds of air when you're underwater. And eventually, pretty quick, you can get a basic oxygen tank and then some flippers to help you swim faster. But in large part, there's no heavy gate. Like, I don't know what would have happened if we had swam. I mean, we would have starved eventually, I guess. But not only did not occur to us to do so, but it was entirely possible. And I think that's probably why it wasn't like we didn't want to push the boundaries of it, because it seemed like, I don't know, it did a very good job of keeping you close to your pod, because one, that's where like replenishable medkits were, so that was just one clever thing. Those are free and they always come out. But two, you really can't go too much farther. In large part, like there's one kind of like more the giant ship that crashed is emitting radiation, and not too long into the game, maybe like half an hour or so, it explodes. It's like warp reactors combust or whatever. And it begins emitting radiation, and there is a level of radiation kind of wall that keeps on moving out from the ship towards you. But past that, it's really actually just you in terms of one, the fact that the day-night cycle is maybe like 20 minutes tops.
Yeah, probably
total.
Yeah,
like a full 10-minute day, 10-minute night sort of thing. And I'll come back to this, but night is horrifying. I mean, night is terrifying, despite. I think there are probably a few more predators, right?
Yeah.
I think predators were a little bit more active, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you mean at night?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, there was definitely more predators.
But even past that, even if they hadn't been, it took us, like, I think the first time we almost died of thirst, or we did die of thirst, was because we stayed in the pod for the whole night.
Yeah, we
were too scared to go.
Yeah, we didn't.
And we were like, we could probably find it in the morning, and then we couldn't, and so we died.
Right.
Which we wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise. But it was at the point where we were like very happy to let some of our like survival gauges go down to not be outside at night.
Right.
The other one is just another really elegant one, which is just like oxygen. When you can only have like 70 seconds of oxygen for diving, it's just that limits where you can go, and it's cool because you can see everywhere. Like again, there's no artificial walls anywhere,
right.
But you literally just can't get down there. And part of the progression system is getting bigger and bigger oxygen tanks so that you can go farther and farther. And the game even has other limits on that. Like once you get below a certain depth, your oxygen becomes getting used quicker.
Right.
So then there's something else you can craft that will slow that down. So it's a really organic exploration curve.
Yeah.
And it's nice that in so much as I at least didn't feel like we were running out of places to go either.
No.
At all, in terms of even the small amount of places that we could go with our starting gear, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so there was a lot of cool kind of soft limits on where you could go, and what that did is it didn't make it feel small. It made it feel gigantic, actually expansive.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you couldn't go there yet because you didn't want to. It was like we limited ourselves more than anything, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, we could have kept on swimming, but we stayed within this radius of our pod. Direction's another big thing that's cool. You have like absolutely no compass. You can build a compass later, which you still haven't done. But in large part, like your pod and like the ship crash on the horizon are your only ways of finding stuff.
Right.
And so yeah, having a home base is super important.
And one of the other things that was I would say one of the harder gating mechanisms was the radiation.
Right.
Where if you got too close to the crash ship, you would start to get warnings about radiation. Your health would start going down. That was a problem.
Right.
But I think compare that to No Man's Sky, where I don't know, like a lot of the limits in Subnautica felt very realistic, right?
Yeah.
Like we were like, oh, that's not unreasonable for me not to be able to swim to an arbitrary depth.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, this is reasonable. I can only hold my breath for so long.
Yeah.
We still are unclear about how the oxygen tank refills itself.
It's just some.
In some ways, it felt a little bit like unrealistically good, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to worry about the bends. You don't have to worry about right.
Well, I mean, I think our dolphin dive when you surface is probably the least realistic thing in the game. It's bizarre. I mean, you're definitely trucking with the flippers. But every time you surface, you do a full dive. You leave. You get airborne.
That's true.
And then enter back into the water. Like even if you don't even do a full dolphin dive, you go up and your feet will leave the water, and then you come back down. There's a lot of velocity.
There is. Well, and that's the thing is like how brilliant of the designers to make you feel simultaneously like superhuman and also really limited.
Yeah, totally. No,
like,
absolutely.
Because you feel like you can swim at like the pace of a fish. You're like, I'm going.
Yeah, you said actually the first thing when you got into it is you said it felt like a camera, right? Like
like being in no clip mode.
Yeah, being in like Forge mode in Halo for the 5 people that got that reference.
Yeah.
Right. But no, seriously, it's. I mean, that's just again conceptually to talk about like simulation. Straight simulation isn't usually fun. If we really did a straight simulation of being crashed on an alien planet, even with all the resources we had, it would still suck.
You would just
die. It would not be fun.
It'd be a dying simulator.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I love that. It reminds me of the horror games actually, in terms of the really, really careful amount of power you have to give the player, where it is boosting us to superhuman levels and cheating a little bit with some tech. This is one thing you mentioned too, even when we were playing, was that there's no fatigue, right? Was that you just never had to sleep,
right?
And that would make a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
But as well as can we talk about?
Well,
just kind of meandering. Can we talk about our water situation and the unrealism of how we got water for, I don't know, a week maybe?
We can. 1 second though.
Oh, yeah, no, please.
I want to mention that like if we, even just the brilliance in the game design, like if we would have slept at night, then we wouldn't have had that like internal wrestling of like, do we go out at night or not? It would have just been like, it's night, so we sleep easy.
Yeah.
But instead we had to like,
force ourselves out of the pod every night.
Right, which is freaky.
Well, yeah,
like, it was freaky for me just to, like, even broad daylight, first thing of the game, I was like, guys, I don't
want to get into the water. Yeah, it was the first thing.
And I was like, but you have to, like, you've done anything else to do.
Yep.
And the expectations were set so well by the trailer.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the sense you get from No Man's Sky is like, this is going to be pretty cool. Right?
I love that you made No Man's Sky like a sleazy, like, car salesman. Hey, kid.
Pretty much.
Hey, fellow kids.
You want to explore the universe? Try.
Do I have 4 planets for you?
I'm going to procedurally generate a squirrel with bat wings. So
I laugh because that's gotta be.
It pretty much is what I saw. It was like a dog. It was like a dog with wings. It was just weird.
Hey, you want to see a squirrel with bat wings? Yeah, you do.
The possibilities are limitless.
I know. But I'm bat with squirrel wings.
But anyway, so like, I think the expectations were set so differently for this game, and that played so much into the, you've got to manage your resources, and you've got to actually care about, where you're going to get water. Yeah. Which will, Greg, you want to tell the story about where we got water?
Oh yeah, it's great. So, we didn't at first. We just, because the game, so like you do have, you're in a spaceship, so you're in some space age technology. There's some like kind of cheating there in that regard, but there's an AI that is kind of helping you a little bit here and there, and we figured, because as it went, even in the early, like the first like 20 minutes of the game, it would like tell us things about survival, like how to survive, how to get this thing, how to get that thing, and our water gauge kept on going down. You start with 2 bottles of water, and it goes really quick. And we figured that like once we got low enough on water, like the game would prompt us and like show us how to get water, because you can like make water in your little fabricator, but it didn't tell you how. Like it was blurred out and it said ingredients unknown, and I was like, well, that sucks.
And so spoilers for anybody who doesn't want to know how water is made.
Oh yes,
we'll get there.
It does seem like so. Anyway, I only speak very fondly of this, but it turned out to be kind of funny in terms of the reality of it. So yeah, and then it never told us anything. We just died of thirst. So then everything got bent towards like, holy crap, like, okay, we really need to find water. Right. Like, remember our water gauge got to like a quarter, and we're like, we should start looking for water. Yeah. And then we died, and we were like, okay, that's all we can do. Just look for
pretty
water.
Much.
So what we ended up finding out was that there's giant, huge kelp forests, kind of like seaweed forests, that are, maybe like 100 feet tall. They're huge, right? There's gigantic things, and you can harvest them. And they take up tons of space, and we found out you could actually eat them. And your water gauge is 100, by the way, and it probably goes down like, I don't know, 1 tick per...
5 seconth?
Sure, yeah, 5 seconds is probably fair. And we found out that eating this giant thing of kelp that took up like, I don't know, 1/8 of our entire inventory would net us 4 food and 1 water. So we'd go on water shifts where we'd be able to play the game for like 20 minutes and then come back and just demolish this forest, like leave a desert behind. We like eat like tons of vegetation.
Actually tons.
Exactly, like literally.
Like if you were to measure this in the real world,
it's like thousands of feet of seaweed and plant that we were getting like little bits of water out. Like we were eating like thousands of times our body weight. Like we were an apex predator at that point, just leaving whole barren areas of the ocean behind us. So we were just consuming these gigantic stalks of green plant life.
And this is how we survived for a bit.
And we did that for like an hour or so, right?
Yeah, it took us a while. We got
longer than that, probably.
Yeah, we got pretty far into the game before we realized that there was an alternate source of water.
So 2 things about that. One, it was really cool in terms of it did feel desperate for survival. Like it felt like survival was all we were trying to get at. We were not worried about like building things or like establishing radio contact or like creating a society.
Yeah,
I don't think you can do that in this game, but still,
you're just one person, Greg.
Yeah, but it was very much bent towards, and again, organically bent towards. We can't play the game more until we have water.
Right.
And that was really compelling. And we found this way that sucked. So I love that they gave. It wasn't just it didn't teach you, but it did give you a really sucky way to get water. And as well as we managed to. The game, again, I don't know if it was just the way we played it or just the natural learning curve. Maybe everyone who played it kind of experienced this was, okay, at first you figure out, here's like bare minimum, it's the kelp forests, you can harvest these. But obviously you can't keep on doing that. And if you did have to do that for the whole game, it would get really old and it would suck.
Oh, yeah.
But it did it for long enough to like teach you the importance of survival, made it feel like you were actually kind of living off the land. And then when you find the next thing, it felt like a massive relief. Like when you figured out how to actually make water, suddenly we were like, oh my god, this is the best. Like, so much nicer. But it was like this really simple progression. It wasn't from like no water to like, okay, you figured out how to get water. It was like this actual kind of like slow problem solving thing where we tided ourselves over with this horrible system.
Oh yeah.
This horribly inefficient. Like we'd net like 60% of the water because of the time it took to harvest the friggin' water.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Your water gauge would continue to go down as you're harvesting.
Yeah, and it went down quick. We also were never ever hungry because
tremendous amounts of food.
Our food gauge is always top down.
But I will say that like this, the more we talk about it, the more I realize like it was just a really gentle game.
Yeah.
But like also it gave you limits, and like it was very clear about those.
And
limits.
we died like what 4 times?
Yeah,
4 or 5 times.
I think so.
I mean, it wasn't like. The time, it was. They didn't make it horribly. Also, death isn't horribly punishing.
That's true.
Which is nice, but it did make
it's actually unclear what the punishment is for death.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing too that we could talk about maybe a little bit. Is the that makes me think of like Skinner boxes, right? And variable reward systems, variable punishment. When you don't know what the punishment is going to be, actually, like when you can conceptualize exactly what the punishment would be, you can then do like risk assessment for it.
Right.
But when it was basically when you die, it said you've lost some items. I think.
Yeah, you lost some things,
and it didn't tell you what you lost, and it's kind of hard to remember everything in your inventory.
Right. So like, did I lose something super valuable?
And then didn't one time we die and it didn't say that?
Yeah, it didn't.
And I don't think we lost anything. So it's very unclear what happens when you die.
Right.
You respawn in your pod basically, and you may or may not lose items.
Yeah.
But it did make us feel like when we found some really weird trying to build some a little bit farther onto the tech tree. We were trying to find some silver and some gold for some computer trips, and they're very rare. And when we had them, I remember our health got really low, and we were like, okay, we're gonna keep on because we'd figured the water thing out, and we were like, okay, we're gonna keep on like being out in the ocean to try to keep on scavenging for stuff. Or should we go back and get a health pack? And it was like no-brainer. Like, no, we can't lose the gold. We might lose the gold. We might not. But it wasn't worth the risk. So we swam the half a kilometer back to the pod.
Right. So we could bank our gold.
So we could bank it and then go back out to that area that had those resources again.
Because we didn't want to lose it.
Which again, I don't know. Like maybe we're just circle jerking here, but that's a really impressive feat for a survival game too. Like again, there's almost very little tutorial. Or kind of like on the rails direction from the game itself.
Yeah, very little.
Which, yeah, it's
and I'll give No Man's Sky credit too. They didn't give you too much direction. In a lot of ways they kind of let you run free. But I will say, like, contrasting the resource experience of No Man's Sky with the one from Subnautica, like, you're immediately given like a mining laser that you just like can point at things and resources pop out like a large amount of resources. Really? Like, you want to get some plutonium, just like wander over to this bush.
Just like really
point your.
They didn't even make it rock.
No, it's like this weird crystalline structure that grows out of the ground.
Yeah.
But you just like point your mining laser at it, you get like 50 or 60, and it's like, and they come in like bunches. Yeah. So to collect 200 plutonium is not really that big of a feat. Yeah. And then you're pretty much immediately given a scanner that you can like then use to scan for any resource on the planet.
Wow.
And so it's just like, at that point, it's just the question of, okay, I need to get to this resource. And then that becomes a pain.
Yeah.
And so the playthrough I was watching in, there was one resource that spawned like 8 minutes away from the spawn that he really needed in order to get his ship working.
Yeah.
And then once you get that resource, which it did take a little while for him to travel over there and get that, then the only really limiting factor is just distance in No Man's Sky. Like the goal is repeatedly get the next warp engine so that you can warp these like
farther,
like 50,000 light years, like further than you could ever travel even with your boost.
Right.
And so you can use your warp drive, but your warp drive you can only use once. So then you use up your warp drive and you got to get another warp drive.
Get more fuel.
And then you use your warp drive and you got to get another warp drive, and it's just like it's not a really fun game loop.
I mean, it sounds like I'm gonna link our two perennial whipping dogs. Oh, by the way, in gaming news, there's been tons of T3 right now.
Oh, yes.
So I do want to recognize that, and in large part, I don't care too much. I'm getting old, guys. It's getting scary. But like Fallout 76.
Yeah.
I've also never played a Fallout game, but okay. Regardless, Blizzard is hiring for a new Diablo project.
Yes, I did hear that.
I would be shocked if it's a Diablo 3 expansion. I will be very, very surprised. It also will not be a remake of 2. So I think it'll be a full new release, which is fantastic. And I was like, yes, a horse to kill and then beat. A new one. But no, I was going to link. You're just talking about that, like then the next sword drive, and then you go to the next place so you can get the next sword drive. So that's the Diablo loop, right?
Right.
It's you get the bigger sword so you can kill things faster, so you can get the bigger sword.
Right. The difference, I would say, is that
inherently, but killing stuff in Diablo is fun.
It's fun. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So there's at least, even though I put 200 hours into that game and got tired of it, but the first 100 at least it's really satisfying to roll different characters and to play through the story and to play with Mark and try all the different stuff as updates came. It took a while for that to wear off because the core gameplay was at least fun. The loop sucked. Right. I would argue, but the experience of the game was satisfying, right?
Yeah, and
I got hundreds of hours out of that,
and that's impressive from like a game design standpoint.
Yeah, totally. That inherently it didn't have too much to offer, or rather, not inherently. I guess it did have a lot to offer, but in terms of like the reward system was not well geared, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For Diablo, but it was really fun to play and blow stuff up and kill stuff and.
Yeah, exactly.
Satisfying.
So you could just keep doing it, and it did give you a lot of room for progression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether or not it was satisfying, like Paragon levels scale infinitely, so it's like there's always something to do.
No Man's Sky didn't seem fun though.
Yeah, the experience of getting the next warp drive almost felt kind of arbitrary. Like, okay, what do you want to do?
Like immediately in the game? That's like first hour.
Yeah, pretty. I think I kept looking at the clock to just be like, okay, where are we at? Because it felt like we were exhausting the things to do pretty quickly. Like within the first half hour, we were in the spaceship.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this seems like a pretty big accomplishment, right?
Like
if this was Subnautica, that would be like, okay, you finished the game.
Right. Yeah.
You finally were able to take off from this alien planet.
That's a good point.
But in No Man's Sky, like first 30 minutes, you're like, okay, cool. Like now we're in the spaceship. Now we can travel the universe and like I don't know. At that point, I was like, if I was really trying to min-max this thing, just like start collecting resources. Just because when you're in space, you have an infinite number of asteroids that are around you. Because they can't strand you in space without resources.
Right.
Because then you could get stuck.
Right, because then you can actually literally get stuck.
Right, so they don't want you to get stuck. So you could just mine asteroids, and the elements that came from these asteroids were fairly valuable. And so you could literally just collect enough money for the next warp drive doing that, and then just keep doing that.
So here's a question in terms of, it's just one of the contrasts that might be, just a slight apple to orange situation, but at core, Subnautica really feels like a survival game. And we also, to know, there's multiple modes in Subnautica. We're playing the survival, like, I'm pretty sure the base game, kind of as it was designed, the normal. There's
Not
a hardcore
the hardcore
mode, which is a
What were
permadeath
the
one.
other modes?
The other one was no gauges whatsoever and unlimited resources. That was just sandbox.
Okay.
And then there was one other that, I don't remember what the fourth one was.
I don't know. Wow, I can't imagine playing the game without gauges and resources. Anyway.
Yeah, it would just be
so important.
It was. Well, yeah, I guess it would just be building.
Yeah, I guess the people who really like
getting to the building mechanic, which we haven't gotten to yet. So,
right.
In any case, I would say, at core, Subnautica is a survival game, and No Man's Sky isn't really a survival game.
It's not, but it's kind of raises the question: what sort of game is it, Greg?
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was like, okay, so they don't want you to ever get stranded. So they're removing a fail state entirely. Because, like, obviously, if they made you get stranded and you couldn't go anywhere and you had to start a new game, that would suck. That's a permadeath, right? It's the same idea.
Right,
but if, like, you got stranded, like, say you, like, find yourself out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have enough resources, the game could be like, you done messed up, kid.
Yeah, just like give you a failed.
Yeah, and then you respawn at the last planet you were at, right? Or minus some resources with whatever penalty.
Right.
But it didn't do that, right?
No, it didn't. No, it made sure
ensured that there was
happened.
no possible fail state.
Yeah, and I feel like there was a lot of kind of coddling in No Man's Sky. Where just like immediately when you hop into the water, it feels threatening, and like the sound design, you do have in Subnautica. You have threatening creatures around you.
Oh, yeah.
You feel...
Or you have stuff that you just don't know what it is, and it could be threatening, and you're like, is that threatening?
I don't know.
I'm going to go ahead and say yes.
Like the gasopods or the squid whales. We don't know what the technical name is for the squid whales
Oh,
yet.
yeah, we haven't really met the squid whales technically yet.
They look menacing, though.
I mean, yeah, they don't look... I was not excited to get closer. With giant tentacles.
So, but in No Man's Sky, like, you see, like, oh, that's a dinosaur. But at no point does it feel like, oh, this dinosaur is going to hunt me down and kill me.
Yeah, what's your interaction with the wildlife?
It's pretty well, like, typified in that scene from Jurassic Park where you're looking out the Jeep, and they're looking out of the Jeep, and they're just like, look, it's dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like, right? They're not
and you, like, take the picture and you add it to your Pokedex. And,
yeah, exactly. You're not like, oh my gosh, this thing could definitely, like, eat me in one bite.
Yeah, totally.
You don't feel like that at all. It does feel like a theme park where it's like, oh, look at the pretty dinosaurs. Yeah, okay, on to harvest my plutonium from the rock. Yeah. Like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
and so it didn't feel like a survival game. It didn't even feel threatening.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the interesting thing. I'm trying to think, outside of just the default, which I think is just a stroke of brilliance in terms of just the setting, that just the default getting in the water was hard, even during the day. And at night, it was, still, even to the point where we were at, we were feeling pretty secure in terms of our getting a feel for the game, and certainly our gauges, I think we were fine. We had a flashlight and a knife. I still didn't. I mean, going out at night was not ideal at all. Particularly when we got into like the deeper water areas. I was like, or caves, absolutely not.
Because it's only a matter of time before we run into a new predator.
Oh yeah, something bigger. Or the sand sharks, right? Those things freaking popping out of the sand at night would. And the sound design, like I said, is super brilliant. So anyway, the point is that it did feel just inherently the ocean is such a great just fundamental thing to freak the F out of people with.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so easy to just project all of your greatest Cthulhu-esque fears. And then there's another great little spoiler, or not spoiler, but like a teaser, right? Like the game's good with, I don't know, it did leave me wanting more and to see more of the world and more of the aquatic life and kind of the way that things were going to go. And but potentially, right, the one of the first things you see in kind of the scanning of the planet is Leviathan class biome detected, or potential for Leviathan class biome, which we have not seen yet. But and I do know a little bit about, just because I saw an article about it when this game first came out, about people finding the first Leviathans. But there are like actual like gigantic sea monsters out there.
And that's so cool.
Which is awesome. Like, it's so terrifying and so fantastic at the same time, right? So I feel like the game did a really good job. So we talked a little bit about like just the feeling of it, but particularly even just the core kind of carrot on the string point of hinting at stuff without feeling overly overly demanding,
right?
Forcing you to go in a certain direction.
It was very I would say carrot on stick is a good analogy. Like it as soon as you felt comfortable with like what you could do, the game showed you like, oh, but you can do so much more.
Yeah,
and like,
and the Fab actually did that too. That was a clever.
Right, the way that the build tree expanded. Yeah. It wasn't Factorio style where like you build 3 things and then you have like 2 billion options and you're like, what the heck do I build next? Yeah. Like Factorio, the explosion is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is a very steep curve on that one, isn't it?
But the Fab, I would say
it's like, oh, you built a factory. Now you can automate nanotechnology.
Pretty much, yeah. You can, like, have you ever wanted to build a factory,
yeah.
kid? Seriously, that's a thing.
Hey, kid, want to build an actual Ford F-150?
But in Subnautica, it's the build tree expands fast enough that you're like, you can't ever build just what you want, probably. Like, by the time you can build the thing that you want to build, there's more stuff that you're like, no, I want to build that.
And again, I wonder how much, like, I gotta believe that was a really carefully constructed progression system that they did.
Yeah, I have to.
Because it fell into place so well where, when you build something, you unlock something new by building the thing before it. So there's an unseen tech tree, basically, that you get by collecting things and putting together your simple resources and then making more complicated ones, or building, finding a schematic or something like that. It was very, very well doled out. As well as, like I said, there's very little direction in the things you can do. I mean, there's a scanner that you could put together that when you scan stuff, it'll give you, obviously more concrete information on it and what it could be used for potentially. There's a repair thing, so you can begin repairing parts of your pod, which wasn't clear what it would do. And we spent some time trying to get resources for that, and so on and so forth. So it was or flashlight, survival knife, stuff like that. That was not shoved down your throat at all. It wasn't even mentioned. It was just in the menus.
Right.
So and we were like, I don't know, what should we... I had no idea how to value anything. And so that can sometimes actually be annoying in games, though, right? When you have, like, zero direction, zero sense of, like, okay, I don't know, is this thing going to be good? And then you build it, and you're like, oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Like, crap, this actually isn't that useful.
Right.
I didn't get too much of that sense with maybe a little bit with the flashlight, I guess.
But we didn't
spend a whole lot of time on it. Like... And plus, like, for cave diving, once you started when we were looking for, like, the sandstone deposits, that became helpful. So, any point is, I didn't get a sense, like, even though there wasn't any single thing that seemed like it was totally necessary to survive, all of the things were, like, helpful in their own way.
Yeah.
And the more things you had, the better, certainly. Like, I never felt, like, horribly wasted on a thing. But it was also not like, hey, once you unlock this thing, then you, like, are set.
Yeah, it was never just, like... things didn't get strictly replaced very much.
No, yeah.
Our oxygen tank did get upgraded, and that was like, okay, it's a new oxygen tank.
We have more,
But, like, the flashlight, we don't have a replacement to that. Like, everything was useful, like you said, in its own way. Mm-hmm. And I think that was, I don't know, I just think that's good design. To, like,
super engaging. That's
clear. And
feels like you have more of a toolbox. I mean, this is like... Again, the really well, beautifully curated, like, creativity of giving you a bunch of tools that are ill-defined and can have very wide uses, and then letting you kind of just play in the ocean with them.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about, the cool things happen when you give players good tools.
Yeah.
You get all sorts of emergent effects from the games.
Totally.
And people make whole sub-games inside of that game.
Yeah, exactly.
And you could even see how this game lends itself to that because they have a mode where you just build things.
Yeah, totally.
Which doesn't appear to be the original intention of the game, but I bet once they started, basically once you get to the end game and you can build whatever you want, people started to think, hey, you know what, this is really fun. We could just give this to people right out of the gate and it could be its own game.
Oh, I guarantee you that mode was added after release.
Yeah.
Probably deeper into development, or at least after, like, the early access release. I think this game was early access. But, totally. I totally agree with that. And that's the cool thing. Whereas, like, we kind of, about 5 hours, and with three dudes, not that it was a horribly complicated game, but at least we had 3, like, set of eyes and 3 ideas. Set of ideas might take you a little bit longer if you just did it by yourself. But in about 5 hours, we felt pretty darn stable in terms of survival, right? And we just finished putting together the thing that lets you construct structures, basically. Mm-hmm. Seems like there's a whole system in the game to build a small
base,
underworld settlement, like a self-sufficient kind of settlement sort of thing.
Yeah, which I'm very excited.
Which looked awesome, and we exactly. So that's a cool, like, phase thing too, where, like, again, if they left it in large part at the level that we were at, that wasn't going to be able to last too much longer. Right. Whereas just if you're just going out to gather resources and then come back and try to keep the survival thing. and then find a new thing, and kind of they could keep on bringing you along to a new area, and then maybe have some other resources to find to make another new thing that gives you really no true way forward, but a few more tools or toys to play with. That would get old. But now we have a fundamental like change to the way the game looks like it's going to be being played, which is an actual construction site.
Right, setting up like a home.
Yeah, basically. Exactly. In the midst of this, and exploring more, hopefully. And
that sense of like coming back to the pod, I don't think will go away. Like we will still have a place that's like our home base, our safe place.
That's a really good point too. I wonder if that's almost entirely necessary in a survival game. Not just a survival game, but like a big open world, kind of like Minecraft-esque.
Right, for you to have a home base.
Well, when you have a goal, because like Minecraft, right, there's like the survival mode version of that where you have to get to the center of the earth, but no one really does that. That became more just about building things in Minecraft and creativity, which I don't feel like Subnautica will entirely turn into, in the same way at least. And then you have No Man's Sky, which is straight exploration, absolutely zero kind of city building or... You're just improving your ship and your ability to explore.
They added that later, but definitely in its base version.
Right.
Exploration.
I'm trying to think of other games that do that. I don't know, you think about like Sea of Thieves, right?
Oh yeah, that's true, just on the boat.
Yeah, and being able to upgrade the boat and the boat dynamics, but that still apparently wasn't enough. Seems like there's a balance.
Well, I think it's very significant to invest in something repeatedly. Yeah. And I guess you could kind of do that with the ship in No Man's Sky or with the boat in Sea of Thieves, but there's something about like having a place to return to and to protect.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
Like, imagine if some giant predator were to like, if we were building a base and some giant predator came up and started like trying to harass our base.
Right.
And like how fiercely we would defend it. And like... It's more than just like, oh, we could never build another base, right? Because at that point we'll know the tech tree,
right.
We'll know like where to get all our resources. It's not that we couldn't replace the base; it's more of like it's just instinctual.
Well, totally, and like I was even thinking, just a very again simple kind of like it'd be highly violating to have something take out our little drop pod that we'd spend five hours in.
If we came back to that drop pod and something was living in it, that would just be like terrifying.
Well, which actually might happen with the eggs. I'm glad we didn't hit a Jurassic Park. You can collect creature eggs of various types and sizes.
But should you collect creature eggs?
And the answer to that's probably no. And yet we did.
Right, and it's so great because you have the choice to do that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, exactly. And as of yet, we haven't attracted any gigantic creatures. We don't even know what kind of eggs we have, so... But...
And the game has done such a good job at setting us up for, like, it might do unpleasant things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it promises very little in that regard too, which I really enjoy. So yeah, I don't know. I've been thoroughly impressed. Obviously, it's just one gaming session. It was just the beginning, the first 5 hours of it, and it was with two of my best friends who
so
I don't get to see. So
fun.
I think that was jacked up a little bit there. But at the same time, I don't know. I've had games that I've started. Like Xander and I, I'm going to get murdered for this. I shouldn't have even started saying this. No, we tried playing The Witcher 3.
Oh, no.
And that game, partially that game doesn't take as well to multiple people playing it. But yeah, we ended up stopping. Because...
And that's all Greg will say.
And yeah, because it was so good that we couldn't bring ourselves to keep doing it.
Oh my gosh.
No. I'm sure that's a fantastic game. But no, anyway, the point of that was to say that... crap, I just undermined my whole point. The point was, like, it has to be a good game for us to keep playing, and I talked about an actual good game that we didn't keep playing, so... You know.
I think it's a game that does lend itself very well to being played with multiple people.
Yeah.
Because it's... Like, mechanically, like, what you're actually doing with the controller is not, like, super important.
It was crazy simple, too.
Yeah.
The control scheme was almost
really
insulting.
Easy. It's not like Guitar Hero where, like, the whole fun is, like,
doing the
controls.
Yeah.
Right? It's definitely not like that. It's not even
that satisfying, honestly.
No, it's not like even a hack and slash or like a Dynasty Warriors or anything where you're
Diablo.
Like, you get to run around and hack stuff and your controller vibrates and it feels pretty good to like God of War.
No.
It doesn't. It's not like that at all. Like it's much more like being strategic and tactical and trying to survive and thinking about priorities and what gauges are getting low, and everybody can kind of contribute to that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is that it was really, it's 4 buttons basically. It's 2 interaction buttons, a use button, and then direction. Like like you said, it's basically it's a 1-stick camera control. You point the direction you want to be going, and then you and you steer that way.
Right.
That's pretty much it. Which actually was pretty elegant in terms of the 3-dimension. Like it never felt. It was very easy to navigate and 3-dimensionally on the Z-axis. It never felt. I was never trying to do something that I felt like I couldn't do.
Yeah, no.
Where I was like, just go this way. And I did have times where I felt that way. So, or rather, I really wanted to go somewhere very quickly away from something with teeth.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was thinking. Okay, so let's think of like critique at least. The one. I mean, the toolbar wasn't good.
The toolbar?
Remember, like the. So
the toolbar was
terrible. Horrible.
I don't know how that got overlooked so quickly.
Or maybe we're missing something? I don't think so.
Yeah, so what happened was with the toolbar, when you assign something to a quick slot, it always would go in the first slot. And everything else got pushed to the right.
Yeah, bumped down.
And you just didn't have any control
no custom
over...
Yeah.
So, if you wanted to, remove the item in the middle, you would have had to insert, 3 different items, and everything would have been out of order. It was weird.
What I ended up doing was, you just had to continually... Unfortunately, we only had 6 items. If you had a lot of items, that would get really old really quick.
I would say maybe it's possible that if you played on PC, you could drag the item down to the slot you wanted to have it in instead of just pressing the button.
Oh, that's right.
Because we were playing through Steam Link.
That's a good point. Yeah, we were playing on a TV through Steam Link with a controller.
So it's possible that has a better experience with a mouse and keyboard.
That actually makes some... I hadn't even thought of that. Of course that game is built for mouse and keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
That whole control scheme... makes so much more sense when you think about it in terms of
because I'll say that the menus and things like that were a little painful.
Yeah, or even just why there's only 4 things you could
Yeah,
that makes so much more sense. I'm sure that toolbar is just the numbers,
right? Yeah,
as opposed to hitting a button to switch. With the D, because in normally the toolbar you just have to select things with the D-pad left and right. You have to go through them to get to the next one. But I'm sure that would just be an item select.
Number key.
Oh, that makes more sense.
One thing that I found myself really wanting, and I think it would enhance the gameplay, if they gave you a way to chart things earlier.
Sure.
I would have loved to been able to say, okay, this is an area where I found this resource.
Yeah.
Because then it would start to feel okay, I'm discovering this area. Because that feels like something I would actually do in a survival situation.
Super baseline stuff, right? Begin marking out, not even a map of the area, but just the ability, a blank template and a drawing board.
Yeah, just a piece of graph paper would have been fine.
I agree.
Okay, 2 clicks west, there's some
This is where I was finding a bunch of this crap.
Yeah, there's a bunch of silver.
There's this kelp forest over here that seems to be tons of these animals. A lot of the stalkers over here.
Right, and so just some sense of being able to map out my intuition of okay, there's a forest, and then past that there's a bunch of caves, and just being able to put that on paper so I don't just have to keep it in my head.
Totally.
That feels like something I would actually do in a survival situation.
Totally. And it would be very doable in the game.
Even if I had to write it on a wall, I would absolutely start trying to keep track of what's around me, because that's really significant when you're trying to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, it also gives you a little bit more a sense of paying it. Well, you do pay attention, but being able to, it gives you another sense of control as a player. Being able to begin feeling like you actually getting to know your surroundings and mapping it out and naming things and which. Yeah, no, I totally agree that, again, not a full nav, because I think it's a really important thing was they didn't even give us a compass, which I liked, because we kept on having to use the ship in the distance for okay, let's put it on our right and go that way. And that's all we could do. But no, I totally agree. The other thing that I was thinking of was, so in the game, you're alone. Like I said, you have this kind of AI in your drop pod that helps a little bit. One of the first things we managed to do was, build a repair device, and you repair the radio in your drop pod, which is cool, because that's, again, super... One of the things you should be doing is transmitting your location.
Right.
But we got communications pretty quickly. We can only kind of receive them. It doesn't seem like we can send them out.
We can't send them, yeah.
But we got one from another pod that crashed nearby, and that was a cool... I don't know. But part of me was it started pretty early where we were not alone anymore. Even just hearing other voices and being able to find the rest of the crew, and then eventually there's this kind of ongoing saga where another ship in the system picks up your distress signal and is trying to figure out what's going on. So they're sending these, communiques to you that you can't respond to, but it's are you okay? Are you really okay? It starts off why did you send this? They're probably just hungry. Something stupid. And they're oh yeah, we're getting what was it, crash readings from your area. Are you okay? We're going to come over and check it out. But anyway, I think one of the cool things was the complete solitude of the game, and certainly the beauty and the majesty of the world and the aloneness in it that got shattered pretty quickly by human voices and characters.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I was like, I don't know. It wasn't horrible by any means, but part of me was like, I kind of wanted that to be like towards the end of the game, where you
finally
or just even the question of like, did anyone survive?
Yeah,
or were we literally the only ones? You know. Or like, because now, as of now, it seems like these guys are like, holy crap, like something happened, we're coming, we'll be here in like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And
I wonder if that'll actually happen in game time, or
maybe
it's unclear what game time is.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like if there would have been like an ending portion where you're like, oh my goodness, like finally I hear another human.
Yeah.
You could have even built that up to like. And that's one of the things I'd say the game is weak on is its narrative.
Yeah.
It's like, it didn't feel like they were really constructing a compelling narrative for our character.
Yeah.
Like, they threw a bunch of, like, lore type things.
Yeah, that was the other weird thing with the lore.
You can read about the aliens, you can hear about, like, these different characters and these other spaceships, but I don't feel super engaged by the people. I feel really engaged by the world. They did that brilliantly.
Yeah, I want to find out more about that. I mean, the other thing that's been hard, I think, is in large part... and maybe this will change as time moves on, but there's not a huge amount of interaction between. Like, it doesn't quite feel like an ecosystem where like the animals are interacting a whole ton and stuff's hunting each other, and like sure. The things live, you know, like in the. I guess the sulfur things, kind of, but even less. I don't know. Point is, everything pretty much stays to itself and doesn't seem to affect anything else. Mm-hmm. It has mentioned, you know, that you can use fish to distract predators, which we haven't done yet because we really haven't had to in large part. Yeah. But so that's another thing that I think wasn't quite fully realized was the interconnectedness of like a whole world around us. It's more kind of all these disparate things that seem to coexist fine, you know.
Yeah. And I will say that and from a standpoint of like, does this make sense in the world?
Yeah.
No Man's Sky, I think, because the planets are separated by such great distances, you're like, okay, these things really would not interact. Like,
no, totally. Yeah, there's no reason to expect any interconnectivity between these things.
Right, because you're talking about distances that are tremendous. Yeah. But when you're talking about like a single ocean, you would expect to see more interaction between the wildlife.
And actually, one of my
I think that's something they might do more later on. I hope maybe once we get some bigger monsters in there, they might start eating things. Right,
seeing like a more of a food chain or even something like that. Yeah. One thing I really did like was just a weird behavior from one of the predators is that we kept on finding these big caches of metal, like scrap metal.
Yeah.
And eventually we saw one of the predators, kind of the opening predators that you can kind of just fight off, not too hard, but they can still do damage. They just seem to be collecting all the scrap metal that fell around the area, and they'll bring them back to like a nest or something.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say anything about that. Doesn't say why. We just caught seeing one of these stalkers with this giant metal piece, and then we followed it and found like 8 other metal pieces.
Right. It was collecting it.
And I was like, that's cool. Like, I have no idea why. Like, there's no explanation there. It made it feel alive. You know, more like a world. Less like, okay, the stalkers exist to be like a predator to deter you from going certain places, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It felt more like, oh, maybe, I was like, what? Maybe those nests are they like mothers? Like, are there genders to these things? How they reproduce? All that jazz.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I was super. I enjoyed that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think that's probably that's an underused technique in games and in world building. I definitely think it helps. It actually reminds me of the D&D campaign that I'm running, where you add things into the world that they aren't just there for the players. Yeah. Like, players can get kind of egocentric, which makes sense because the game's literally made for them.
Right, yeah.
But that can actually start to hinder their curiosity about the game because it's like, imagine going through life and just assuming that everything that was happening because you were there.
Yeah, because you're
right. It's like you wouldn't be curious about it anymore because it's like, I'm the most important thing here. Why would I be curious about something else? Like, clearly I'm the most important thing.
Yeah, nothing can be happening that's that important out there, right?
Right. So like when you see an animal that's behaving in a way that has nothing to do with you, or in D&D,
totally.
When you encounter like a monster who's just like going about their own thing, they got their own mission and has nothing to do with the players, like that all of a sudden now you're drawing people into something compelling. That's bigger than themselves.
And I was just thinking that for the genre too, like I think that I was thinking that in like other games, right? Like that was one thing that the Arkham games did really well was making it feel like having random things be happening in other areas. In large part, you'd be able to interact with them because you're Batman and you'd be able to right the wrongs. But there's so many things happening throughout Arkham City. I know, exactly. Yeah. You see Deadpool, too?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay. Yeah. There's a good joke in there. But, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, so particularly in a game that really lives and dies on its immersion, like Subnautica, and again, not to just continually whip No Man's Sky, but I didn't see a whole, like you said, it felt very much like, ooh, like snap a picture. Like the animals don't do anything.
No.
They don't really interact with each other. They don't, they will probably be doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like
when you leave.
Like Pokemon Snap,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon Snap was a cool game, but it definitely did not have the hype of No Man's Sky.
Well, it also didn't have, I mean, that was like proof of concept in like 1998.
Yeah, it's like a very good point.
In terms of the amount of interaction you could do with the things. It is that, so. In any case, what are some good things we can say about No Man's Sky?
So No Man's
I would say some of the post-support was...
what?
Some of the post-support that they've put in they've really done a frick ton.
I mean, so I haven't seen it in like its most modern form because I was really more interested in why it failed so hard in the beginning. So that's kind of what I've been studying.
Right.
But because I think we can learn a lot from failure. But they've added in base building mechanics. They've added in, I think there's a little bit more that just happens in the world around you now.
Yeah.
And so, like the world feels a little bit more alive, and it isn't just like this empty space.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, kind of random events.
I don't know if you necessarily have too much of a reason to care about your home other than that you've invested in it, which is definitely like a powerful...
Not negligible. We were talking about that with the drop pod.
Right.
We spent 5 hours here, and if something were to come into that, I'd be pissed.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that just psychologically, you're going to create some buy-in, and you create a sense of like, I have something to lose when you allow somebody to invest in like a massive base on a planet.
Yeah.
And so that's cool because now you actually care about something in the world instead of when you can go anywhere and do anything with your spaceship, you don't have to care about anything.
See, the core problem is still, though, no matter how... Okay, fine, you build a really great base building game,
right.
But then you just should have made a good base building game.
Right.
Then you don't want to leave your world, and the point of No Man's Sky was to be exploring things.
To leave your world.
You know?
Yes.
So it's inherently, I think, just like, I don't know, man. It might just be a level of the technology to fill the promises that they seem to be trying to make. Not even, I mean, verbally made, but also like the point of the game, right? What the game should have been able to do. Mm-hmm. I just don't think you can do yet.
Well, and if you think about a game...
Other things you can do great, but...
Right.
Again, the promise of this, like, just never-ending exploration... That'll be interesting.
Well, we've talked about how existentially terrifying that actually is, right? So, like, even if you could perfectly realize that, it's like, it would be a weird, like, Rick and Morty-esque sort of, like,
that's
moment where you realize, like, eventually if I travel far enough, I'll run into, like, a clone of myself.
Yeah, you'll find me finding myself.
Right. It's
that would be very Rick and Morty-esque.
It would be super weird. And so, like, you know, I'm reminded...
Or, like, why do I even care about seeing this thing because I'm going to see something different.
Right. There's always going to be something
There's nothing
cooler.
unique and everything is unique.
Right. It's just like everything's so special.
Right.
I don't care about anything.
None of it is singular.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's not good. Yeah, that's.
But that does like when
we made eye contact there, by the way. Prolonged. Thoughtful eye contact.
When you were talking about base building, like I was reminded of Factorio, where like you just build a base and you build a bigger base,
right.
But things do start to threaten your base, and so you have to build up defenses, and the goal is to build up efficiencies, and like it's a very elaborate tech tree, and so you have to go very deep in that dimension. You can't just sort of sprinkle a little bit on and be like, okay, have fun with your like 6 buildings in this base building game. Yeah. Like no, you've got to have like a tech tree with like 3,000 upgrades.
Well, I will say one of the things about Factorio is its ludicrous depth, which is both a good thing and has been noted to be potentially a little bit too much,
right?
And turning off the players at all stages. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think fundamentally the game doesn't. You don't fix anything. You pad the game basically. You put some good stuff in, even if it's a good system by itself. You don't fix the core issue of the game, which was that it didn't seem to be able to successfully do the thing that people wanted it to do. Well, and so that's why when I see stuff like Star Citizen, like, good lord. I mean, I can remember, I was a freshman at college when that was like midway through development. Like, I think they were promising for 2012 at that point. It was insane. But I remember, like, that game's just been in development forever, and it's some very similar promises being made. It's like, it's a full It's a full space combat simulator on top of a complete first-person shooter campaign with very deep story, including a completely open world that you can explore for. No, seriously, it sounds like a joke almost.
Really?
On top of a fully functional MMO world that you can interact with anyone at any point for any reason.
Right.
And there's a complete and utter. There's an economy like EVE, and content like World of Warcraft, and graphics like Reality, and the TIE Fighter game that was really good on 64. And it's just and a COD campaign.
He's just trying to do everything.
I was like, what? And completely customizable everything, and 100% realism, but also it's really cool. And I don't know. I was so anyway. Point is, I'm barely overstating it though. That's barely an exaggeration for what that game was promised.
I mean,
so in any case,
I do think that open world games No Man's Sky feels like a really good platform to build a game on.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Imagine
totally.
if each planet had its own thing.
Yeah,
right?
seriously. Or if someone came in
that could be fun. This planet has two warring factions, and you can get involved in a first-person shooter where you're fighting for one side of his faction.
Oh, totally.
And then take over that, help one side of the faction take over the planet.
Yeah, have it
that would be interesting.
Have it be minigame-esque, right? We were talking about the ways that minigames could fit into your game. You could fit small, really, really pared down, shallow versions of really fun concepts into different planets and do different things.
Right, and I feel like that would be the most redeemed version of No Man's Sky. Honestly,
that would be up there. I mean, also want to give credit where credit's due. No Man's Sky is a really good name.
That's true. It's a
good, really good name, man.
Name.
Come on, that's. I remember reading that and I was like, oh, that's brilliant. It evokes wonder and awe and freedom.
The Firefly theme.
It's exactly it.
It evokes the
You can't take
Firefly
the sky from me, man.
Oh, goodness.
That's exactly what it does.
Well, I think on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining us for our thoughts, scattered and brilliant,
about
Subnautica.
Obviously. Well, that's the other thing. Hopefully, we'll be able to stream that. I mean, it's a stupidly streamable game.
It's very streamable. It's really fun to watch,
and wouldn't be hard. Like I said, it's a really easily multi-streamable one too, where I can just be watching and you can be playing. And
that's true. Yeah.
So that works.
That would be great.
It's just gonna be the next Doki Doki.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hopefully, so Monica appears at some point.
Just Monica.
We look in a mirror and it's Monica.
It's funny actually. Doki Doki is probably setting up for another horror game. That's what people think.
Really?
So stay tuned.
Really?
We know next October we've got 5 straight weeks of horror.
I'm
just kidding. All right, guys.
Coming up.
So if you want to contribute to us getting a PlayStation 4, we have got a Patreon up right now, patreon.com/gamingmechanics. If you want to email us with your thoughts about Subnautica, No Man's Sky, or just any game you're playing right now that you really have been thinking about, you can email us mark@gamingmechanics.net or greg@gamingmechanics.net.
Yep.
We'd love to hear from you, and we will talk to you next week.
Peace.
If you enjoyed this episode of Gaming Mechanics, check out our Twitter @GamingMechanics or our Facebook by going to facebook.com/gamingmechanics. Thanks for listening.